Welcome to the patch 25.06. This is a big patch in comparison to the others. There will be some tweaks when it comes to lane swaps as well. So Riot is doing some shifts. They mentioned that it was a temporary change for the first 10 competition. So we should be seeing more of these, as I do agree that it's not a permanent solution for the game state currently. A really good update from Riot is that they will be refunding some LPs when you catch cheaters, for example. If you report a player and in case he's a cheater, instead of losing the LPs, you will actually be refunded. So it's a good update from Riot, and the players that will win with cheaters will still gain the LPs. However, if you duo queue with a cheater and you abuse the system, you might get punished as well. So be careful of that. In case you know you're playing with a cheater, be aware of not being punished along with that person as well by abusing the system. Champion Mastery, they're doing some changes. Your shop is returning, which is really good. People have been completely onto Riot since they've removed the XX chests, which is why they've brought it back, which is really good. Makes the community happy in a way, because yeah, it was a really weird stance from Riot to do that in the first place. So Caitlyn is being nerfed in her damage. Apparently Caitlyn has been performing really good, especially in solo queue, not too well in competitive in comparison, unless your name is Metro Archer. So your roll Snaptrap per W is being decreased by 5 on each rank and by 10% bonus AD overall. Now this change is mostly for mid-game onwards, because in the early game, you don't really care about the 5 damage differential. You really care when you start building damage items and you lose a 10% bonus AD in comparison to before. It's a sizable change. The ultimate will also be losing some flat damage, not skilling damage, only flat damage, which means, yeah, the ultimate hurts a bit, especially when you're looking to end targets, but the main change is the minus 10% bonus AD. Will this kill Caitlyn? I'm pretty sure it won't. In spots where you can pick Caitlyn and be obnoxious, you will still play it as you should. I do think that in lower elos, this nerf won't be felt as much for a very simple reason. Caitlyn's in low elo to medium elo. They don't know how to properly play Caitlyn with the trap placement. Really good Caitlyn players will feel this nerf because they usually pivot the gameplay really well around the trap placement. In low elo to medium elo, it won't be felt as much. So yeah, Caitlyn high elo is being tweaked in this way. She's being nerfed for high elo mainly. Corki, very placebo nerf for bot lane. Not being nerfed on mid lane unless you're playing into Yone, Smolder, Akshan, champions like that. So Corki has been dominating for quite a while. I really don't understand why they're saying he already falls off a cliff late game when he's a really good champion on late game. Either way, yes, Corki is being a bit squishier on bot side. I do agree that he has too much HP. So yeah, Corki is definitely in a fine spot place regardless. I guess you understood what I meant with a place. Darius, the fastest clearing jungler of the previous patch, is being nerfed by her percent monster damage modifier, so they want to reduce his clear efficiency and not make Darius as obnoxious as before. I'm really surprised how the number was actually 300% before, and they haven't really understood that this was fucking broken. But hey, at least we'll be seeing less Darius in comparison to before. Draven, no one cares about this change. I think it's a really meme change. I don't really get what Riot has done. Ezreal, really placebo nerf as well. He's losing 0.5 armor throughout the time. I do think they do this because Ezreal is a champion that can stack HP really well with Shojin, in case you want to do Black Cleaver in some games, which is really rare, by the way. But if you want to do Shojin and you want to have play Seal Caps and you have this armor growth, it could be really tanky and difficult to kill. And with his mobility, I do agree that they should make him more vulnerable in his base stats, for example. They are nerfing his skilling stats when it comes to base stats. So with his mobility and the fact that he can build Shojin and Trinity Force HP, he should definitely be nerfed when it comes to his armor growth. Still really placebo, it will be fine regardless, and dominating pick when he should be picked. Sure, this is a big change. Her Q is the ability that you max first, and she will always have 20 mana and can spam this fairly well. So Fiora has not been necessarily popular, especially with the lane swap meta. She has been suffering quite a lot because you can't just, even though they blind pick Sante, you cannot pick Fiora because you would get lane swapped and you could not answer into it at all. Fiora would really struggle versus lane swaps. So now that lane swaps are less effective and that they're not happening, Fiora can now show up as a better counter pick, and she can show up by having more spammability with her Q being now flat cost when it comes to mana despite maxing by level 9. So she will be in a good spot. I'm not sure if this is too big of a change because minus 20 mana, it means that each time you cast, it's literally 50% of before when you're level 9. So I do think Fiora will be quite strong in the next patch. Yeah. Garen damage on critical strikes. Pretty much they're nerfing full crit Garen, and they want to keep Juggernaut build the same. So crit build will deal less damage, of course, it will be felt, but Garen will still be in a good spot because he should function as a counter pick. Yes, he can be blinded because he has a lot of sustain and a lot of tools to be viable. I would say though that he should mainly function as a counter pick and he will still be fine despite the 25% damage loss in crit build. Now Gwen, a lot of people have actually not enjoyed this change because they're trying to make Gwen a bruiserish oriented build, but most people say that this is not the way that they should tweak Gwen. They're saying they should give some sort of healing in her passive so that they could rely on the bruiserish build instead of doing full burst Gwen. So basically they're giving less health growth, but they're giving 30 more health by level 1. So she will be harder to kill in the first few levels. Her passive will be nerfed for jungle, so her clear will be heavily affected since it goes from 10 to 5. And her damage is also going down by 0.05% per 100 AP. So this is nerfing if you're looking to rush Glass Cannon Gwen instead of going for a bruiser build with less AP inherited in this case. A final snip is being buffed by 10 damage on each rank, and her AP ratio is being untouched on both sides, but the maximum damage is also being increased by 10, just like the final snip damage as well. Bonus resistances is being now flattened into 25 instead of 22 by level 1, which is a buff for the most part, so you're giving her more resistances in the laning phase and less resistances throughout the rest of the game. So she will be squishier by while the game goes on, but during the laning phase, the first few levels, she will be a bit trickier to execute and to kill. That's what Riot is trying to do. Give her some laning phase stability and make her scaling a bit worse by allowing her to have an easier laning phase. That's a bit weird, but still. Skip and slash cooldown is being decreased also to 8 seconds by the end rank as well, and the cooldown refund now is 50% at all ranks. On hit damage eventually gets increased with the same AP ratio, so they're trying to give Gwen more mobility with this change mainly. So they're giving her resistances, more HP by early levels, while getting off AP scalings all in all. Damage per needle is being reduced by 5 and also 2% AP, and initial slow is now going to be 60% at all ranks, which is really obnoxious. She becomes more useful in this matter, and reduced slow is now 25% at all ranks as well. So she will lose damage, she will have more survivability, and more utility with the slow from her ulti. Is this a healthy change for Gwen? I don't think this is the entire change that she needs. I think some HP growth changes and leaning her into a more bruiserish AP build would be the way. But I think this doesn't do the entire job as they really should look to tweak overall. Jarvan is gaining 10 damage on each rank ability plus 5% bonus AD. I do think that Jarvan is not being popular because there are a lot of counter picks currently. I don't think it will change unless you play into a very specific draft where you're playing against immobile carries, immobile champions. For example, if you're playing into Orianna Varus and you know their jungle and you know your jungle matchup and you know that she cannot get as countered as you could be, then Jarvan can gain some value. But when you have Pantheon, when you have Vi, when you have neutralizing champions that can easily make Jarvan's life really difficult, and I'm not sure if he's going to pop off, but it's a nice change. 10 damage is a lot, I would say, for earlier levels. And the 5% bonus AD is going to help a bit because he builds Thunder at Sky and so on, unless you go lethality build as well. So yeah. Jhin. Jhin is weaker than we like him to be, and he's become a bit more early game skewed over the years, which means he has room for mid and late game buffs. In this patch, we're looking to bring back some powerful 2-item spike builds and generally improve Jhin scaling. Bonus AD 444, so it goes from 0.3 into 0.35. 0.3 per 1%. So this means that if you have 100%, this is a 5% buff in damage with bonus AD because it's 100% more. And if you build a bit of attack speed, for example with RFC and Yuntal, you will also gain a bit more damage in comparison to before. So his early game is still going to be fine, so they want him to have more damage throughout the game's transition, as per se. Jinx doesn't change anything. Yeah, she will deal less damage with her ulti. There might be some scenarios where you're not able to execute your opponent because of this nerf, but this is a really small nerf. Jinx will still be okay, especially with an enchanter. I think she does really good when you have the ability to go with Lulu and whatnot, so I don't think this will change anything at all for Jinx. Same thing can be said for Kai'Sa. I think despite getting 2 more armor and becoming a little bit more reliable in laning phase because of her health regeneration as well being buffed, she will be in a good spot, but it won't really change that much in this buff. I think the biggest change for high elo might be this one, mainly because of the cooldown from the ultimate. For lower elo or skill brackets, it will remain the same because people don't usually cycle this ability too much. And yeah, I think it's a really small Kai'Sa buff overall. So yeah. Karma. Karma's quickly risen the ranks to become arguably the strongest mage enchanter spore in the game, alongside with Lulu. I do agree. She will deal less damage during the laning phase. She will have less poke, but the thing is, even though she will be less obnoxious during the laning phase, her most obnoxious part is the amount of shields she can provide when transitioning into mid game as well. So not only is she's a lane bully, but she's excellent at laning with her poke as well. So even though they're reducing 10 damage, I don't think it's really enough to stop Karma from being priority in certain drafts. Even though you want to prioritize Rel, Leona, Nautilus, Alistar, Rakan, those types of champions in frontline, especially for competitive. But I think Karma, she's definitely being nerfed. Is it enough to stop Karma from being good in certain angles? Definitely not. She will still be okay despite this nerf. Kha'Zix bonus damage goes from 14 into 17 and then 136 by end scaling. But the biggest change is the 50% bonus AD. So it goes from 40 to 50% bonus AD. And the leap change, it doesn't really do much. Yes, it's 20% bonus AD into 40% bonus AD. But unless you jump on top of your opponent, then it's really difficult for you to have that damage when going on top of your target, because usually you utilize your E as a gap closer, and there are some times where you can land and deal the damage, but a lot of the times you use your E as a gap closer and you don't deal that additional damage. Now, if you actually land on your opponent, you will deal a lot more damage. Now, will you feel this? Well, if you actually evolve E, perhaps, but if you don't evolve E with the short range of the leap, I don't think you will utilize this all the time. The biggest change, however, is reliability on his passive. So going from 40% to 50% is the biggest change, even though this one is 20%, because this is fairly more difficult to hit in comparison. Lillia. Lillia's a bit weak right now, so she's due for some buffs to help her out. I don't think she's really weak though. I don't think she's necessarily full weak. I think her meta state, the meta state is not fitting for Lillia. Because, for example, if opponent picks Karner, or if the opponent picks a really specific pick which is good for Lillia, she can still appear if you have Corki, Yone mid, and Corki and Yone mid has not been as popular unless you're playing high elite competitive. There are some times where Lillia does show, but it's especially when you're looking to play Yone or Corki mid, for example. So I do disagree with the fact that she's weak. I do think that she has less angles because you mostly play AP mids in comparison to before. So, for example, if Yone and Corki become more popular in the meta, or if you play in solo queue Akshan and you bring Lillia, I think this change might be fairly obnoxious because you give her more space with Swirl Seed to look for better angles, to look for ulti angles as well. So now the AP ratio goes from 50 to 60%. I don't agree that she's weak. I just think that the game state does not make Lillia show up as often as before. That's all. Lucian. Cooldown goes from 19 level 1 into 16. We don't care about the other numbers, by the way, because it goes back to 14. But by level 1, you gain 3-second cooldown, which is huge because you can be more aggressive with Lucian. It's a huge change, to be fair. It's really good. It's a really big change, by the way. 3 seconds is huge for level 1. Naafiri. His armor growth is being reduced, and his bonus critical strike damage is going up by 25%. Not sure why they're doing this. Maybe because they think they can shift into Yuntal build. But Naafiri is usually more comfortable on doing on it instead of crits. Yes, maybe some crit builds might show up with Yuntal as well. But I do think that the on it build will still prevail as the most popular regardless. Now, Naafiri, this is a huge change. To make it simple for you guys before we watch the base stats, they're making her ultimate her W with less cooldown, and they're making her W from now into her ultimate with more cooldown. So basically, they're trying to shift Naafiri for a flexible option to play in the jungle as well. So she will have less pack mates overall. Let's start by reading the base stats. So she will have less health growth, armor growth, she will have more AD, and less AD growth, but we don't care about that number overall. So basically her passive max pack mate, you will have more pack mates on the passive in comparison to before. And now it will be scaling from level 1 to 9 to 12 to 15. So basically it goes to from 2 to 5. Pack mate damage is going to be decreased overall, along with the bonus AD. Pack-mate health growth goes from 16 to 13. Less resistances, reduce AoE damage. This is buffed in later stages. Pack-mate reduced damage from turrets now goes to 50%. Pack-mate taunt duration goes down to 2 seconds. And now it deals 165% damage to monsters. So they want to make Naafiri a jungler as well. Q damage to minions goes to 80%. But the biggest change is now coming. Lost in a pack, Naafiri in a pack mates 1 second of untargetability. So basically, when you use W, you become untargetable, which is when you try to gain that burst of speed, you know. And now you will basically, how can I say this? So bonus AD is going to be flattened to 20%, okay? You will now gain only 2 extra pack mates instead of 2, 3, and 4 in scaling. And basically, you will have less movement speed because this is now our W. It's not our ultimate. So you gain less mobility in comparison to before. That's why, okay? Mana cost is going to be decreased by 40 because this was her ultimate as well. And the cooldown goes from 120 to 20 seconds and then into 18. after, pretty much. So this is what gives you the movement speed. The buff duration is not going to be lessened. You will have like less pack mates, and it will be more reliable in your passive because of it. Now the problem is, her ultimate is now the dash, okay? The thing is, the dash will only be used with this cooldown, and the cooldown is now going to be 110, 95, and 80. So basically, if Naafiri scores a takedown within 7 seconds, she reveals nearby enemies and can recast this ability once. So the second cast you gain a shield, but you cannot recast at everyone. You can use this maximum 2 times, and the second time you gain a shield. So before, you could use this with a normal ability and you wouldn't have to wait too long because you could just spam the ability before, because it was 22 seconds, as you can see here. So now her dash is inherited in her ultimate, which makes her less reliable when it comes to all-in situations. Her all-in situations are now reserved for her ulti, and before you could look for some play potential even before you could have her ultimate cooldown back, for example. Most Naafiri players don't really like this change, and despite she has some of the problems being fixed, some problems are being added. So I think this is the first of many changes that Riot needs to do to Naafiri. I think it's a step, an interesting step, but I don't think she will be in a good spot, especially from the feedback from Naafiri players overall. Could be mistaken, but I don't think this is enough. But a very interesting change though. Poppy, cap monster health damage is being increased, so basically they want to make Poppy flexible for top, support, and also jungle, because she has been fairly popular in both, but she stopped showing up in jungle because, well, other junglers are fairly stronger than her when it comes to jungle clear, even though she can be utilized, and mainly utilized, as a neutralizer overall. So basically, they want to give her more damage in her clear. Singed. Base attack speed is now going to be up. Okay, this is equivalent to getting a 12% attack speed at level 1. Poison Trail. If a minion would die to another minion while affected by poison and trail, Singed gets the kill credit instead. This is huge for his last hitting ability, because a lot of times you would lose the minion because of the minion last hitting it, and now you will get it regardless. However, his fling will deal less damage, minus 5% AP. Well, no one fucking cares. Now you get more quality of life change in his farming Q. Yes, you lose 5% AP on E, but it will still be fine. Smolder. He has been really specific when it comes to the drafting. So, yeah, Smolder has been in a grave for quite a long time right now. Okay, so at U, W, glob damage is being increased from 30 to 60 level 1. And explosion damage is being lessened from 30 to 10 level 1. But they're giving more scaling bonus AD. So they want it to be more reliable when hitting, and this is mainly for last hitting, but it's also a reliable change for poking, as you can utilize this 30 damage increase, even though the explosion is now lessened as well. Overall, it's a buff. Flap Flap is being doubled pretty much and has 5% more AD, but it's being doubled by level 1. Then it goes by 5 as usual. Ultimate cooldown is now being decreased as well, so we will have more angles to spam it. Twisted Fate, no one cares. Xin Zhao, you will have more damage, and I do agree. I think Jarvan and Xin Zhao have fallen actually in comparison to other junglers, so giving more love into Jarvan and Xin Zhao was expected, even though I do believe that they should look to nerf the other junglers and not buff these, because when the other junglers like Pantheon, like Vi get off the meta, I do believe that Xin Zhao and Jarvan will be extremely overpowered and they will need some nerfs eventually because of the meta shift at some point. Yorick kept monster health damage, goes from 300 to 70. This is mainly because people have been finding Yorick jungle fairly obnoxious, which is fair. I think Yorick has been tormenting, and his clear speed is really fucking fast as long as you stack the goals and you bypass his shitty landing phase initially. So yeah, people are not really happy about this, mainly Yorick players, but people that dislike Yorick obviously like this because this will make him less viable as, in comparison to before, obviously. Serylda's Grudge is now going to have 5% more armor penetration, and ability ace is now going to be dropped by 5. So Ezreal will lose 5 ability ace, but now he gains 5% more armor pen. This is okay, but yeah, there are very few users of Serylda's Grudge. There's probably Jace, Ezreal, and a few more. Naafiri, for example, Zed. It could be the argument for that, but if they really want the extra armor pen, I think they would lean into LDR, but they want to lessen the ability S, so losing 5 ability S is not that big of a deal. Of course it hurts, but 5% armor pen might be a change that helps Ezreal a bit, and the Serylda's users, even though they lose the ability S. Warmog's cost is being decreased by 200, and now again bonus health equal to 10%, and goes to 12%. Okay. Basically, Warmog's cannot be rushed. It's a late game item. You want to do it on 4th or 5th slot, ideally. And you don't want to do it all the time. I think the meaning and why you would build Warmog in the first place will remain the same. If you're playing against a poke composition and you want to have HP regen and be full HP instead of resetting tempo and losing tempo and then coming back in the map. If you're playing against champions like Xerath, Ezreal and stuff like that, then you still want to build Warmogs eventually later in the game, unless you really need a more important item, because now you gain 2% more out of this and the item is cheaper in comparison to before. So against poke comps, yes, you want to utilize this. Against normal comps that don't really have too much poke, you don't really want to buy Warmogs regardless, and you want to shift into other items that might help you more in comparison. Systems, anti-lane swaps. So this is going to be a change for lane swaps. I don't think it will be perfect, but it's a step into the right direction, let's say. The start time is going from 130 to 135, so 5 seconds more. And time in top lane, it's going to be 1 wave before, so 3 minutes. Mid lane is going to be 215. This is really good. The change from 330 to 215 is in case you kill bot lane by level 2, now if support and ADC go into base and they find a window to punish mid, now lane swap will not be detected. So instead of having an NPC matchup on mid only with junglers impacting, now the support can show up before the threshold where you get level 4 and level 5 in mid, close to the ulti. So I like this change because this makes mid lane more chaotic instead of being more reserved because of the lane swap changes. Minion gold and XP penalty goes for 25%. Okay, well, I think it was way too hardcore regardless, but yeah. If you're about to trigger lane swaps on your teammate, the warning message is not clear. Bounties now goes from 14 to 6 minutes instead, and bounty suppression by lead severity 30 to 100%. Okay, we're taking our big swing, returning past from champion bounty suppression. Coupling the time I'm changing the system in the backhand so we can start suppressing champion bounties whenever we want. We're choosing 6 minutes for this first version, which should give some time for 1v1 laning comebacks. I hate this. Also turning on in time for early to mid game team fights. Second, we're more than doubling the suppression strength. Suppression will begin. This part is fine, but starting earlier with laning phase is really bad because if you punish your opponent, there are some solo kills that are bad for you because you lose tempo on the map and he comes back and he has a better wave. I don't really like this bounty for earlier, but it is what it is. Atakhan. Overshot with the tower dive adjustments to Atakhan's form selection because there's a lot of ruinous Atakhan showing up. We're readjusting the calculations of voracious can actually exist in games for solo queue players. I do think they should rework voracious Atakhan. It's not showing up as often. They want to make it to pop more because competitive has been seeing more ruinous Atakhan in comparison to before. But solo queue has only been having ruinous Atakhan for the most part. So I don't like Voracious Atakhan currently, and I think they should rework Voracious Atakhan and make it 50-50. I just keep my statements as before. So arena changes, you guys can watch this. I'm not going to run these down. Swift play as well. Baron buff not skin. I'm not going to look into it. Some skin things, bug fixes, yada yada yada. And Battle Academia. skin line. Kayn, Rakan, Zaya, and Kiana. Okay, TLDR of the patch. Let's really cook. And look closer to close this one out. So LP refund with cheaters. Champion mastery is going to be tweaked. Your shop is coming soon. Caitlyn will be fine even though her W will hurt by losing 10% bonus AD. Ultimate doesn't really matter. Corki will be fine. Darius will be less picked, but he can still show up in some cases. Draven, no one fucking cares. As well, it's a placebo change. Fiora, this is a big change, especially because lane swaps are no longer a thing as well. Garen, it will be fine, but he will be losing damage in crit builds, 25%. Gwen, I don't think this is ideal. She will have more survivability and strength during laning phase, but she loses damage later on. But she has more utility because of her slow in her ultimate now being flattened by 60 and 25%. Jarvan and Xin Zhao are being buffed, which I think it's understandable because they're not as strong as some counter picks. But when those counter picks will be nerfed, which they should be, they will be fairly strong and very strong when they will be back on the meta shift. Jhin will be a bit stronger when it comes to his scaling on his passive. Jinx, she will be completely fine. Very, very small change, I would say. Kai'Sa, she will have more survivability during her laning phase, but this is a very placebo change. Plus, her cooldown from her ultimate will be decreased by 10 seconds on each time. Karma will have less poke in laning phase, no one really fucking cares. It's minus 10 damage, but her shield will still be obnoxious as a support when she has good angles to be picked. Kha'Zix will be very strong because of his passive buff, not only because of the flat damage in his passive, but also because of the percentage going up by 10%. And if you land your E, you will also deal a lot more damage in comparison to before, which is not as reliable as his passive damage. Lillia, I completely disagree with Riot. I don't think she's really weak right now. I think the meta shift doesn't make Lillia show as often as before because, well, you don't have as much AD champions in comparison to the previous patches because now you have more mages being played on mid lane instead of Yone and Corki, so this is completely different. So she's being buffed, and when AD meta mid comes back, or if you play Akshan mid or stuff like that, maybe more Lilias will show, and I don't really think this buff was really necessary. Lucian, big change because you don't max E either way, and you will have three less seconds on his level 1, so you can create more plays, aggressive plays overall. Mastery, they want to try to shift Mastery into crit build, but I think the most popular build will still be the Borg on it with Ginsu's yada yada yada, even though Yuntal build can still show a bit more often now with Infinity Edge and so on. They want to make this shift. I do believe that more players will play it. Will this be good? Well, perhaps, but it might be obnoxious if this ends up being too strong eventually. Naafiri, I don't think this is a perfect change currently. I think it's an interesting change, but Naafiri players are not really happy with this change overall. And they want to make Naafiri a jungler as well, and TLDR, they shifted her W into her ulti and her ulti into her W with different cooldowns and little tweaks as well. Poppy, they want to make her a triple flex by going into the jungle with more reliability on her damage and her kit. Singed will be a lot friendlier to last it, but his E will deal less damage in comparison to before. Smolder will be a bit stronger in early game to compensate how really weak he currently is, and his ultimate will have less cooldown throughout the game. Twisted Fate, small change, whatever. Xin Zhao, I don't really like this change even though he's weak because other champions will be nerfed eventually that counter Xin Zhao, so I don't really like this because Xin Zhao eventually will be fairly strong. Yorick, it won't be as obnoxious as before. Ezreal, Zed, yada 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 will have 5% more armor pen, but will lose 5 ability haste. Those champions really like ability haste, but at the same time, 5% more armor pen will definitely help into bulkier comps in comparison to before, even though you lose the 5 ability haste. Warmog's armor, it will not change why you would build this item. It gets cheaper, it's nicer, but you only truly want to build this as 4th, 5th, or last slot against compositions that mainly built around poking compositions. That's pretty much the reason why you would want to go Warmogs in later stages. Lane swaps, they've changed the timers. Basically, it starts at 1:35. Top lane will now end 30 seconds earlier. Mid lane, it will be 2:15 instead of 3:30, so 1 minute and 15 earlier. And the penalty from the minions will now be 25% less in comparison to before, and I mean 50% less in the total value, but 25% in the flat value percentage. And the alert will be improved. Bounties, I don't really like the fact that they want to make it pop earlier in comparison to the 14 minutes and going to 6, but whatever. Atakhan, only Runas has been showing up, and what I said is make Atakhan 50-50 spawn rates and rework Voracious Atakhan. I think it was a complete failure, and Voracious Atakhan was a long shot, while Runas does actually feel nice for the game in comparison. So yeah, this was the patch change for 25.06. It really doesn't change that much inside the game. I think the lane swaps for mid lane is one of the biggest changes, because I would say that now if you kill bot lane in 2v2 and then you want to roam into mid at 2:15, now you can do it and try to punish the opposing mid laner, and that is a nice angle. Overall, it doesn't really change too much inside the game. I think one of the biggest winners of the patch is definitely Kha'Zix, Lucian, who else? Fiora for sure. Master E maybe shifts into crit builds, but it's really tricky because most people like to play on it. And that's pretty much it. It's not that big of a change. It looks like a fake patch when not looking into the lane swap changes overall for mid lane specifically, because top lane 30 seconds before, it doesn't really change much. But yeah, that's it for the patch. We'll be back for 25.07, and thank you so much for watching once again. Have a great one.